control, pull yourself back up. Hip and hand reach away from each other.
I think it's opposite hip, opposite hand.
Pull yourself up. Let's go 3 more. And we'll hold it.
That's what I did to you.
I just joined this party, so maybe you know.
Hip and hand reach for 2. And this is our third. We're going to reach them away from each other. We scoop up, bring the fingertips together in front of the heart. You're rooting into that front foot, focusing on working to maintain everything rotating towards the front foot down into that big toe pad. Think of that little bit of internal rotation that's happening. We're breathing big. Make sure our shoulders are nice and wide. We're not out there reaching and try to get a little bit further. 2 more breaths here. Slow and controlled in the nose. Even slower exhale, engage the abdominal. After your next exhale, you're going to come forward. And what I want you guys to watch, Eric, will you slow and controlled push off that front foot, reach until we come to that standing position. So we're making sure that we use that hand, we reach, we're hinging, we're loading out of the front foot, and we keep going as we reach and come up, driving through that front heel. We're going to come up to a standing position, and we're going to take our legs nice and wide.
Nope, no, we're not. All right. Nice. You got to do it like you said, right? There we go. All right. Let's work on our flat foot squats. The idea with the flat foot squat is keeping the heels down. Just as low as you go. I think a little bit of foundation training, we're pulling the hips back, but let your spine go. Just kind of compress. Get as deep in there as you can. I like to take my upper arm and just kind of pull it on my knees. It's a good little counterbalance. Good little stretch too. You know, you could dig your elbows into your own armpits. Let's do some arm circles while we're there. Our culture is not so good at this. Keep those heels down. I know, it's hard. Other cultures are very good at this. All right. So let's come back out just a little bit. Bring the elbows inside the knees. Spine a little straighter. Come back down what you can. You're probably going to hit that wall of stiffness a little earlier than before. That's good. Let's breathe into that belly. Get that neck nice and long. Your elbows are pushing out. The knees are pushing in. Hips burning yet? Come up a little bit. Elbows are going to come to the sides of the knees. Head big and tall again. So really trying to posture up, get that chest high, butt low. Elbows pushing, or knees pushing out into the elbows.
Oh, it burns.
Come back up, let's do a forward fold. Now we're trying to straighten those knees, pushing the hips behind us. Quiet, Alfred. Error, Roomba. Roomba does not like stretching. Reach those hands away. All right, so we'll put the hands down on the ground. You can put a knee down if you want. Right knee down. Let's go left hand up. And then we just thread that arm through the leg. You're pushing out into that thigh, stretching the hip open. Then you'll reach up overhead. You can follow that hand up with your eyes. And down. Big inhale at the top and big inhale again. Fill up your lungs, raise. Look at that ceiling. And down again. Good. Now if you can straighten that back leg. We're going to take the other arm now. Open that one up. You can keep that knee down if you want. Do 2 more of those. Get big and tall, sometimes pushing off that front foot, get your body leveled out before you rotate. It's okay if we don't have perfect spines here because we're trying to get the hips to move, loosen them up, and then we're going to add some stability. But doesn't mean you can't have some stability now. So you can either do a plank, come back both feet, or on your knees like this. Push big and tall, just reminding yourself where that neck's supposed to be. Let's do a little raise of that right leg, just a couple in the air. Because then you're gonna bring it up, sweep it up to the outside of the hand. Let's repeat on the opposite side. So first the knees down, thread the hand through. Big inhale, push it all the way up, up, up. Push that knee, elbow out into that knee a little bit. Open up that hip.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to do both sides. If you're going to do it backwards, it's probably harder. Works either way. Straighten that back leg if you want. Now you can do that other arm. And yes, if you want to go for challenge points, back leg straight. This one's pretty tough usually. That's why it's easier with the knee down on that side. All right, back to the center. Straighten that neck up. A couple raises on the left leg now. This time we're going to pull it up through in between the hands. Let's find that kneeling position you guys are just doing. Scoop up to that sphere of tension. Let's do a couple pumps on that back knee. So we're just going to push up off it. Come back down. Push up off it. Back down. Inhale. Press. Exhale. Good. Let's go forward. Let's stretch sideways so your right elbow's pulling towards your left knee. Find good tension, just hold. Big breath in, sink a little deeper, hands a little higher, hips a little deeper. Good, let's step up through. Big and tall. That same thing almost with a lunge now. Pushing out that back foot. Pulling that front hip behind us. Reach the arms up. Do a couple traces. Other arm, left hand going through. So left hand pulling back, right hand pushing forward. Two more. Really think about the breath here. Good. Let's pull ourselves back up so that left heel's pushing the ground away. Getting big and tall. Scoop those hands up again. Let's do a couple. Actually, let's go overhead with this. And we'll twist just a little bit. So your right hip is pushing forward and to the left. And then give us a few pumps on that back ankle. The left hip should be a little burny. Balance should be a little shaky. Let's bring those arms down nice and slow. Help elbows high. Scoop up again. Maybe just a little bit below the height of your heart. Now we're gonna open up the hip. So now we're gonna go right hand. Tracing, the hip's kind of leading, so my pelvis starts to face off to my right as I'm coming back. Push back in. Now let's pretend that we're looking through that left thumb. Keep your eyes trained on it. I like to kind of pushing through water, get a little Tai Chi with this as you come back. Foundation training, get big and tall, so we're still pushing that weight onto that back foot. You notice you're gonna want to creep forward. Keep that tension on that back foot. We just had 80% of the weight on the front hip when we were hinged forwards, and now we're trying to push it back. The pad of that foot is going to grip the ground. Make sure your hip's rotating on the right. It's opening up. That foot's got a grip. Resist that hip's rotation, so you'll really feel it in the ankle too. Feeling the need to keep practicing this one, so keep going. Heather, watch my hip for a second. It's opening, following that thumb, and then it's coming back down. Make sure that hip's going with the elbow. There it is. Keep that belly really tight. Squeezing in. Make sure your back doesn't arch. That's why you take that big inhale at the beginning. Squeeze that belly in really tight. You can even hold that inhale if you want. Exhale on the way back. Let's grab a hold of our thigh here on the front. Just kind of walk your way down. Massage it. Hands find the ground. Let's bring that left back. You do a knee plank if you want. Now bring the right leg up. In between. Let's do a little knee here. Make sure that knee is behind the front ankle. Just repeat a little bit what they were doing. Get big and tall. Pull forward on that front hip. Reach those arms up. Push a little deeper. Add a little corkscrew to the left elbow, but drawing towards the right knee. When you do that, that inner thigh is going to have to pull. It's not really going to move a lot, but you'll feel it activate. Your body's turning, so that hip has to resist that rotation. Sometimes training hip mobility means we're not really using the hip. Other way, coming towards me with the hands. I think you had it right.
Oh.
You talked yourself out of it.
Okay.
You're always going over that front hip, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say always, because the archer, we don't. Reverse archer, we don't. Come back up. Let's get big and tall. And that neck. Maybe think about this for 1 second. Pull that belly in. Get tall. Keep that neck length so the shoulders aren't locking out like a lot of us want to do. We're keeping those shoulders tight. It's really the hands that are reaching. Well, the shoulders are pulling the opposite direction. So you can think about tug of war in this plane as well as in this plane. So your head's reaching, tailbone's reaching, shoulders are pulling back. Hands are pulling back. So north, south, east, west, whatever you want to think. Pull forward now. See if you can keep that neck length and the shoulders in. Don't let your body kind of do that one. Try to find all that tension. You're just adding a little piece. So you might be up here. And this is all you get. And that's good. Rotate. Challenge that hip. Should be stretching all along there. Come back up. Left hand, we're going to scoop up towards the ceiling and stand up, pushing through that right heel. Good. Let's keep that right one forward now. Repeat everything we just did. And you can go super wide like I'm doing. So I'm trying to get more hip mobility, or you can be narrowed up. Up to you. Big and tall. Woodpecker. Reaching. Let's do some rotations on this side. I know we're gonna make it uneven, but just so you can feel that elbow. Watch the elbow. The left hip is really driving me. That's why I kind of rotate and do a little side bend at the same time. This is really just that left hip is pushing. So it's not just like that. We're trying to get just that hip to move, not the spine. Good. And that's kind of what the archer is doing here. This is the reverse archer. So the right hand pulling open, adding a little bit of that corkscrew, pushing back, staying in the hinge. So that hip is pushing towards the wall behind you. Hands are reaching towards the wall in front of you. You're trying to poke me in the eye. Big inhale. Hold the inhale. Exhale on the way back. So that elbow leads the way. It's high. Pushing into that hip, even if it's not moving a lot, you're trying to rotate it. Let's push off that front heel. Trying to get our weight back now on the back foot. The heel's not down though. It's those 2 points of contact, the ball of the foot. Opening up. Neck nice and long, belly pushing in. Maybe 60% of your weight on the back foot now. You're actively pulling the hips back towards that back foot. Head towards the back foot. Let's go overhead like we did before. You can trace up if you really want to challenge it. Because sometimes we go here, we tend to arch the back. If you trace, you automatically bring the hands here. It reminds us, okay, I'm going to engage. Engage, lift. Push overhead. And you feel like, oh, I can't get my elbows to straighten out. That's good. That means you found a lot of tension on the way up. So you're pushing as hard as you can to try to straighten, but they can't. Then the left hip, rotating in towards the right. Do a couple pumps on that back foot. Noticing my ankle mobility is much better on this side. Really try to isolate just that ankle's doing the work. Makes everything else nice and tricky. I push up. Hands behind the head. Thumbs find the armpits. Elbows stay nice and high. Hang out right here for a second. Falling over. Good. Let's come back to that archer now. Big and tall. Hands a little lower than they were before. Pull that belly in. Left hand tracing now. Inhale. Where we're opening up the hips too, not just the arm. It's okay if that foot slides a little bit, but it's really trying to grip the mat as this hip opens up. It's like my body's gonna be facing this way, but my head's still looking at the hand. So if you're just gonna let your head go for a second, you'll see how much rotation you're actually doing from the hip. You should be looking, like if I'm not actually actively looking forward, I've turned. Good, 90 degrees almost. Now just keep the head there. So you might not feel like you're doing as much, but you're rotating. Sometimes I even like to stop, let that thumb hit the sternum, middle of the chest, and then just rotate the whole body. Think like that thumb is just taking you, hip everything, just rotating open. It's like a very, very active warrior too, if I'm correct on that. Good, let's shake that out. Maybe try your squat again. If you want, you can cheat. Put your heels on the mat. It'll let you get a little deeper, or fold it up. Pull back. It should feel a little nicer to get down there. Oh yeah, I can hang out here longer now. Let's walk those upper arms onto your knees. Just do some breathing here. A little massage, a little trigger point therapy. Let's do a little rotation while we're here. Just push that left toe up, or right heel up, and then left heel up. If you got the mobility, you can put that knee down on the ground. Those snap-on socks? Those are nice socks. Good, let's do our elbows in between. Just helps you kind of posture up. So if you watch my butt, it's pulling down. I'm trying to get my chest up. Not squeezing like 100% because then you start to ball up. It's just a little bit. Good. Come up again. Maybe go a little more narrow. Slide those hands. Posture up again. Breathe big into that chest. Good. And then let's go super wide. Take a couple breaths. Pulling that belly in. Breathing into the back of the rib cage. Let's turn each hip in a little bit. So get nice and wide. Put your hand like on your hip. Think about, okay, left. I'm just gonna pull it in from the hip. It's not just the toe, right? It's that whole hip joint. Rotating inward. Keep that belly tight. Right hip, pull it in. Should feel kind of good and stable there, like you're stretching a lot. And really push the ground away with your heels. Add a little inner thigh squeeze. So now we're going to take our right foot, we're going to bring it up, and we're going to let that left knee move. Don't let the knee do too much where the knee's starting to go past that toe. Make sure you're lifting up and the hip is driving backwards. I think you're falling backwards, like I almost did. You're doing it right. You can reach, counterbalance with the hands. Kind of folding over top of that hip. The left is going to push you straight back to center. Take a breath just to get your spine nice and long again. Pushing off that left heel. Folding over the right hip. Check your knee. Be like, yeah, it's just about in line with the toe. If it's creeping forward, or if you feel it in the knee too, listen to your body. If you're like, oh, my weight's in my knee, try that little chop mechanism where we pull that hip behind us, right? That lateral hinge we've been working on. You can even keep that foot down if it's easier. Hinge over top. Let's do a couple side to side there. Just get dynamic with it. So you'll have an inhale here. Exhale, you can even just do one hand. Change the view for you. Get the hips turned in, breaths in. Chopping, reaching. Chopping and reaching. Think about that wall behind you. You're trying to pull that hip into it. Belly stays strong. Almost like you're ice skating. Let's find ourselves back into center here. Let's bring those hands back to the hips. Open. Get big and tall. So we're going to let the hips pull behind us as we serve the platter. So now the palms are up. Elbows are pulling towards each other. Hips are reaching behind us. Let's do a couple dorsiflexions. You're bringing the toes up towards the ceiling. Do one at a time. Each time you do that, think about pulling the hips back a little deeper. Keep your neck long. The back of your skull's lifting up towards the ceiling. Sphere of tension. Pull the hips behind us as we bring that to the ground. This has been our exercise of struggle for the week. But let's see how you do now that we've woken up the hips a little bit. This is our windmill. So while I'm here, I'm thinking about kind of pushing the ground away just lightly with my fingertips, just to engage right above my collarbones. I'm pulling my head up. My hips are still pulling back, almost like I'm trying to straighten my knees out. That should give me a bit more of a flat spine versus, being here where I'm postured up. Take your right thumb into the left palm, just like that archer. Almost that same trace pattern. Pulling. Let's just go to the armpit for now. You can feel how that left hip's gonna push. Come back down. Trace up again. My always hinge towards the opposite hand that's going up. So if my left hand is coming up, I'm kind of pushing into that right hip. It's preparing to open and rotate at the top. That's that full windmill all the way up. And I like either. You can follow the hand with your eyes. Sometimes I even feel like there's more tension doing that, but definitely try keeping the eye right on your thumb that's down as well. I almost try to make like little TPs. Sometimes I use different fingers because I'm still trying to splay my fingers. Sometimes I'll be here, sometimes I'll be the middle finger and ring finger down. Up to you. Now let's do some gorilla lifts. So let's all come back here. Drop the hips now. We're going to raise that right palm up as we do the hips drop. Breath in, back down. Left hip. Breath in, back down. I said left hip, I meant right hand. Sometimes we just straighten that elbow out. We don't feel it as much. This will keep you kind of starting that elbow at your chest like this, and then pushing it forward. You'll feel that, I can't straighten that elbow out. I feel a lot more tension. It's better than just, doing one of these where the head drops. Hands on the shins. Try not to just stand up out of these because we tend to arch our backs. This gives you a chance to lengthen that spine. Think about what you're doing, pulling that belly in tight. Let's pull the hands down. Push through the heels, come back up. Let's go narrow to even that out. Now where we really get the strength and stability. Big and tall. Knees are a little bent. We're going to squeeze those inner thighs together. Pull the hips a little bit more behind you. So really pull that belly in. Let's do a couple steps here. So each step, build on the tension from before. So if I'm breathing in here in the measuring stick hands, I'm tightening the core. Elbows are pushing out as I open up into long wing. I'm keeping that core tight. Pull that breath into your mid-back. Pull those shoulder blades apart and down as you scoop up just a little bit. Then slowly pull the hands back down as you get nice and tall. Let them keep going. Find your hips. Make sure you take a big breath in into the mid-back before you squeeze the elbows in. Palms rotate forward. Head's lifting, heels are driving. Grip that ground. This is a really tough position. All right, relax out of it. We'll do that one more time. Walk you through those steps again. See if you can make it harder this time. Heels just a little bit apart. Think about that belly, pulling it big and tight. Breath is filling up back side of the rib cage, all in here. Each breath is pushing those shoulder blades down and out of the way. It's almost like a seesaw. That belly pulls in, the back expands. So the belly goes out, the back closes down. So we want to keep that belly in tight, expanding all this. If you feel like you take a good inhale, fill it up even more, hold that expansion, open up at the long wing. Because if you don't, right, you're just going to pinch the shoulder blades and be like, it's not that hard. Find that tension. Keep those inner thighs squeezed, weight in your heels. Long wing. If you feel you got good tension, you can scoop up. This really helps set the neck and the shoulders. So I'm pulling the neck long, now that my shoulders are kind of locked there. Or we got that tug of war in this plane where the hands are pushing forward. Shoulders, mid-back are kind of pulling back this way now as the arms are reaching. So again, this is even opening up this area even more. Keep all that as you slowly lower the hands. Take a few breaths while you're doing it. Let them open up. You're kind of reaching, not hips here, but where that femur is, that little bump on your hip. Been taking a breath before I squeeze those elbows in. I'm reminding myself to squeeze my inner thighs as I'm squeezing my elbows. Let's do 3 or 4 good breaths here. Good, shake it off. Let's go down on our bellies just to rest. So tuck your toes in. Get down on the stomach. Before we reach our arms overhead, let's pull our belly off the mat. So our thighs are almost pushing in. So keep the thighs down. It's just that upper pelvis is coming up just a little bit. You can even add that little inner thigh squeeze. And let's just trace our thumbs up, head's lifting away from the ground, reach overhead. Doing that little claw here on the ground. What's good about that is you can kind of like little spider crawl your fingers away from your body. Think about actively pulling your inner thighs together, because as the hands are pulling up, we want to be squeezing those thighs together to pull the tailbone down. So we're getting a good little tug of war with the assistance of the ground. Head is lifting up. So you can even put the thighs together if you want, if you feel the squeeze better there, or you're just kind of wrinkling the mat. That's that anchor position. So you're pulling that sacrum, that tailbone down like there's an anchor attached to it, pulling towards your feet. Let's put the elbows down now and really lift the head. And then elbows up, crawl some more, squeeze. Try to pull that belly up off the mat. Pretend like there's a nail on that mat. If you put your belly down, it's going to get poked. Good for the neck here. All right, let's walk those hands back down. Elbows just in front of the shoulder. I like to have the hands a little bit wider than the elbows and the feet a little wider than the knees. For now, let's just think pulling that head up nice and strong. That good stretch. Elbows are driving through the mat. So next thing we're going to do is think about squeezing. Let's do a little practice. We'll squeeze your right elbow towards your left knee. That kind of lifts your body up a little bit. Do the other side. And now combine them. So you're both squeezing. Might pull you up just a little bit. Biggest mistake we want is where we lift the hips. Watch my head. It kind of compresses when I do that little thing. We want to keep that neck nice and long, big and tall. We don't want to lose any of that good tension we just built up in the neck. So we're keeping that, we're squeezing all those 4 points towards each other. So your knees are staying down, but they're squeezing into that mat. Hips are coming up just a little bit, nice and shaky. Make sure the knees are driving in just as the elbows are driving in. Get that belly up off the ground. Head's reaching towards the ceiling. Breath here. And down. Good. It's a tough one. Let's have you try one more time. And it's kind of in the effort.
Belly is not going anywhere off the mat.
Even if it's not like lifting, that's good. As long as you keep that neck long and you're just thinking about actively squeezing. So the elbows are drawing this line across your body. Knees are coming in. It's kind of converging right where the belly is, and you're just trying to lift that. So don't sacrifice. You're doing good. If you got your head up here, you don't want to be doing that just to get the hips up, right? You find a lot better tension. You're just squeezing, holding nice and tall. A couple breaths here if you got it. Good. Let's walk those elbows even farther underneath us. Let's go knees down. Good old tabletop position. We'll do a little bird dog. So breathe big into that belly. Reach the right hand, left leg. Oh, you're all good. Oh my gosh. And then try to bring that elbow to that knee. Do a little crunch underneath. It's going to remind you to tighten that belly. Keep it tight as you extend to see if you can find more tension. So it's not about reaching super far if you're letting your belly drop. So I'm pulling that belly in nice and tight. Get an inhale. Find that tension. Inhale, pull in tight. Each time, I think if you can find a little more tension, it's not just about surviving, but striving. Just made that up. Let's do 2 more. It's okay if you round a little bit here. Good. Let's switch it up. Take a second to get that neck nice and long, recover some of that ground you lost. Let's pull in first. Elbow to knee. Reach, 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 reach. And back. Tighten and reach. Go for 5, 6 more of these, really strong. Sometimes less is more if they're done right. So we can be kind of like, oh yeah, look at me. You know, quality over quantity. Nice and tight. Fight for that last little bit. So we want mobility, but we want mobility with stability. So if we're not training ourselves for out there in the real world, things we're doing every day, we're just burning calories in here and you're shaking and you're hating me for no reason. So we must be training our hips to work better, our lungs to work better. Good. Back to tabletop here. Shake those shoulders out. Let's do a little pull in, just like we were doing where we're bringing those elbows in. Let's pull that belly in now, kind of round a little bit. And come up. Little cat-cow. Moo. Meow. Opening up those shoulders. And then try to add some of your foundations right into this. They didn't create a lot of these movements. You can just add things that they've taught you. Okay, so I can think about squeezing, lengthening that neck. I'm not going to get as much motion, but I'll get better motion if I'm nice and long. I can even pull where I know I'm stuck. Most people are stuck either up here or down on the opposite end of the diaphragm. So you can think about those 2 different points kind of working. So I'm pulling this in tight. I'm just going to round, trying to force it into that area of the spine where I know it's stuck. Everything else is lengthening. So if you're not using that stability, what's going to happen is you're just going to bend. It's used to bending, and I can feel that. It's my upper mid-back, that place that's always out because it's just weak. So if I keep that area nice and long, I can hit those areas that are tighter, pulling it right into my diaphragm. Hit the neck a little bit. Oh, I know it's tight. I'm even gonna pop. Who needs chiropractors? Let's go knees together. Walk those feet out. Let's go inner thighs hugging. The heels are pushing away from each other. Inner thighs are pulling in towards each other. automatically, as soon as I did that, I noticed my weight kind of shifted forward. That's what we want. We want to get our weight out of the toes. You should be able to pick the toes up. So weight's right in those knees. Knees are pushing the ground away. They're squeezing. Let's get a breath in here. Let's do some slow traces. So palms facing behind you, neck nice and long. Let's go up just to the rib cage. We'll go a little higher each time. Inhale before you go. Let's go all the way to the armpits now. Elbows really high. Let's go right to the top of the shoulders. And down. All the way overhead now. And just hold and suffer. Think about everything else you're supposed to be doing. Sometimes you've lost the tension, there's no getting it back. That's when you can say, okay, just reset really quick. Get that belly in tight where I need it. Come back to where I am. Good. Let's go long wing. Open up. Hands together, elbows together. We're gonna display those fingers just like that. Push up. Keep those elbows together. Ooh. That neck is pulling away. Hips don't come with it. They're staying right where they were. Let's go up and hold. Hold, 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 hold. All right, let it go. Good, good. Let's do a different type of get up. Hands here. Let's see if we can walk ourselves back to our favorite flat foot squat. How's it feeling now? Is it starting to get comfortable? Play a game of checkers down here.
Don't forget to put my toes down. On my toes.
When the toes go up, it shifts more weight into the knees. When the heels are down, it's going to pull that weight into our hips. This really opens them up. Even if your spine is like compressed right here, that's good. You're still getting that hip mobility. As long as we're contrasting that with lengthening work in the spine. So we did a good mix of a lot of different stuff today. All right, let's go up. Do powerful get up here. Let's do just a couple cane squats just to finish up. So the cane squat, you're going to pulling the hips back into a hinge, coming up into a squat, back into a hinge, standing. Hinge, squat, hinge, stand. And just try to apply all those mechanics. You're anchoring. You can do differently. I like to squeeze on my way up. Maybe push the knees away from each other as I'm going down. Even here, push the knees away. Then I'm squeezing. Not letting the knees fold in, but I'm squeezing those adductors. And that helps me really not kind of arch or dolphin my way out of it. I'm using those hips to even lift up. That's where a lot of people hurt themselves with the weights. They probably go down pretty good. They're coming up, and they arch the back. Close this down. All that motion goes into the spine. Try to keep it in the hips. All right, check it out. Get some water. Got a few minutes. We'll just review our windmill. We'll play one of their old school videos. There's things I like and don't like about it. It's just like us, we're always adding little pieces. So you notice on the material they'll add new things as they go. I think the biggest thing that I noticed in this one is the elbows locking out. So just avoid that. But otherwise, the cues are pretty good here. So remember, when those elbows lock out, that usually means our shoulders have pushed forward. So we want to keep those shoulders, what do they say? Say proximal strength, right? Proximal means closer to the axial skeleton, holding in tight while the hands are reaching. So if you're just not thinking about it and your hands reach, your shoulders tend to come along with it. So we're holding everything tight to the body. The hands are reaching. There has to be that tug of war we were talking about where the shoulders are pulling back, and that's when we'll feel that good neck tension there. Watch the hips too. Make sure the hips aren't coming along for the ride either. It's not just the shoulders staying back, but it's those hips. That's why we kind of always start here. That first step is to remind you, nice and tight. It's like you're taking that spine and you're just, not like you're flattening everything out, but you're just getting a little length. You're still keeping that curvature. I'm not doing that. Just longer, taller, a little straighter. It all curves. Same with the neck. We're not flattening the neck out. We're just lengthening the neck. That's the biggest beef I have with a lot of physical therapy exercises. Like, oh, your pain is here, so let's just do this. And they're just working one part of the body instead of working everything as one unit. It has to be, because when we move, it's one unit. So yeah, if you push the neck back, you can be pushing the low back too, and the mid back. So just think about that when you're doing the windmill here. You can even watch if you want to see, because there's some good arrow cues that they don't have in the other videos that I kind of liked, and some flash points where your weight should be.
Begin in a wide founder, as wide as you can comfortably stand while keeping the outside lines of your feet parallel. Grab the ground with your toes and shift your weight to your heels. Bring your hands to the measuring stick hand position and pull your chin back as you lift your chest up, keeping your elbows wide. Take a decompression breath to lengthen your torso and begin pulling your hips back behind your heels, coming into the founder position.
Those
with
knees
slightly
back.
unlocked.
Good.
Extend your arms back, externally rotating at the shoulders into the long wing
Hips
arm
back,
position.
knees
And take
stay
another
there.
decompression
Good.
breath. Bring your hands forward into a sphere of tension at the level of your chest as you hinge a little deeper. Continue hinging deeper to go into a forward fold.
Good.
Once your hips cannot go back any further, allow your hands to come down to the ground or to a prop if the ground is too far to reach without bending your knees or low
Chair
back.
if you need.
Relax your head and neck. Keep your knees unlocked and your hips pulling back and up, away from your fingertips. Begin pulling your hands back and lifting your chest until your hands are directly below your chest with a flat back.
Let's back that up a second. Just watch her. There's a reason what she did there. So she got really long there. She walked her hands out to pull the hips back. Don't walk the hands out. Just have you're not doing like a bear crawl, right? We're not going that direction. I'm only walking my hands forward if my hips are pulling back, so it lets me get those hips way back, and then I can set my neck up. So if you're coming down and your hips are kind of still here, it gives you a chance to pull those hips back even more. Still trying to like almost straighten the knees. And then I'll bring my hands about right in front of my toes, or like you said, your chest or where your collarbones are, pushing into that ground. So that's a good setup just to add, is that deep hinge, that deep forward fold, walking, pulling the hips back.
Relax your head and neck. Keep your knees unlocked and your hips pulling back and up.
Use the
away
chair
from
if you
your
want.
fingertips. Begin pulling your hands back and lifting your chest until your hands are directly below your chest with a flat back and your fingertips resting lightly on the floor. Keep your hips pulling back, knees unlocked, and your spine long. Begin tracing your right hand up your left arm as you rotate your chest and hips to the right, extending your arm at the top. Keep your chin pulling back and your eyes looking down at your hands. Keep your hand pushing away from the ground. Don't let your elbow bend. Trace your hand back down to the ground and repeat on the other side. Keep your hips pulling back and your right arm extending away from the ground as you trace up. Reach your hands away from each other, creating expansion through your chest and upper back. If you can't rotate fully, avoid pulling your top arm behind your shoulder to get it straight up.
So he even said it. You can see it here. She's locked her elbows out. I would disagree. I would say on your setup, you're going to notice pretty much always that your elbows are going to be slightly bent. Otherwise, you've kind of done weird things with your body. So even on the chair here, I've kept the elbows bent, nice and tall as I'm tracing. That elbow's staying bent. I'm not just opening, because then what happens is the lower back does the motion. If I'm big and tall, I'm keeping my hips to doing the work. Usually I'm going to find that I can't fully straighten that elbow out. If I do, I have to cheat my spine. So it's better to keep the rotation here. That's where you should be kind of feeling it. Again, that tight area. We don't want to be rotating all from that low back. It's going to be angry. And the prop can be just as hard. It's just a little different. You have to think about it a little differently. I'm at an angle, but I'm still able to get good tension. I've just borrowed less motion from my spine. Very little spine motion there. When I have to get down to the ground, usually I can try to keep it in the hips, but eventually I'm going to have to use that spine a little bit. But what I'm trying to do is use this motion here. If I'm going to rob motion, it's going to be from here where it's tight. Try not to use where it's low, where it's just swollen on most people, overused. It's all day long. We're just using that range of motion. Some people even watch them walk. It's all from the pelvis, not the hips. So very unstable there. So even walking, we're doing wrong. Right? Let's keep going. Just think about that. Try to find that elbow bend, right? Same as standing. If we're locking out, we're like, I'm not engaged here. Oh, there's the tension. Now I can't straighten. Same idea, just apply it here.
Trace your hand back down to the ground and repeat on the right side one more time. Trace up, rotating from your hips as they pull back. You should feel a stretch on the inside of the leg you are rotating away from. If you don't, make sure your hips are pulling back and your weight is in your heels. Trace your hand back down to the ground and repeat on the left side one last time. Keep your spine and arms long as they pull away from each other and continue to decompress. Then trace back down and reach your hands and hips away from each other, returning to a forward fold. Keep your knees unlocked and take a decompression breath. Come out of the forward fold safely. Bring your hands to your shins, keeping your arms extended.
And someone like her, I can tell she's probably already done like a lot of yoga. So some people are just already super flexible. Those are the ones that really have struggled with that, finding that tension, because they're so used to pulling out of it. Because it's about getting deeper into the position instead of going through a movement, holding the stability. And sometimes it's hard to train those people who are just already super lax. But people who teach a lot of yoga, their spines are actually very stiff. Because to get that deeper motion, you're more compressed in the spine. So they can be super flexible. They're really hard to adjust sometimes. But the spine is so stiff. And sometimes those are the ones that are coming into the chiropractor 3 times a week. You're like, well, you're doing all this yoga. It's supposed to make your spine better, right? Yeah. It's not that range of motion is bad, but we want stability when we're doing it. So today it might have felt a little like yoga, where we tried to add a little bit of these concepts in. And that's the whole goal of foundation training, is just sneak it in. Sneak it in as you go and keep building on it. Even with weight training, same idea. All right, 3 minutes. What do you guys want to know?
Well,
you want to leave?
Usually, like I do stuff around the house all day, and then
that's
I'm on my feet. But
the best time to do it.
It hurts.
That lower back, yeah.
So like, what kind of in between stretches?
Sometimes you even try it when you're doing stuff. You'll notice you'll start adding these things. My thing is when I'm washing dishes, my belly wants to come forward, so sometimes I'll even pull the hips back a little bit, kind of angle myself down. That way I'm not like washing dishes like this. Just little things. You can even take that kind of woodpecker stance. You don't have to be like 100% with it, but it's just better than if you were there. I know if I got wet that I'm not, my posture's bad. So that's just one little trick. Sometimes I'll like be vacuuming and I'll just kind of throw that lunge in there and I'll just kind of, do it there. Then I'll switch the hands and I'm just cleaning. Just try to, pick up stuff that way.
Yeah. That's why I was trying to figure out like what I can
That way you're not wasting time then. You're still add it in. You don't have to be super ridiculous with it. The more you get your hip mobility, your body's going to naturally want to do it. That's the ultimate goal. But right now, you kind of have to overtrain it. It's annoying. But eventually down the road, you're like, you can't think about your breathing all the time. We're trying to create better pathways. We're trying to get rid of the tightness. All that's because it's more restricted. The breath's going to want to take a certain path. It's going to want to breathe up and through here, through the shoulders. It just doesn't want to push into where it's tight because I can't really get oxygen in that way. The more we break that apart, and strengthen the muscles, when it's involuntary, then when you're not thinking about it, you're not it's going to start changing. You start breathing a little differently. Less from the shoulders, less breathing into the chest, more pulling into the back of the rib cage, especially when you're sleeping too. So that's when we do a lot of our breathing, usually bad breathing. That's why we wake up feeling like someone beat us with a baseball bat, is because what is tight is forced a certain type of breathing pattern or even laying pattern, and it just gets tighter throughout the night. So it's like an injury over time. Will that help? But yeah, in between, just everything stop. Like I'm getting stressed. Breathe. You'll find a position that really works for you. I like the kneeling. I feel like that really helps me out because I'm on my feet all day, anyways. I feel like for this area especially, that kneeling really helps these facet joints just get irritated. Because I think my knees like to do a lot of my work for me instead of my hips. So the kneeling just takes it out. It takes the knees out of the equation, forces my hips to work, gets my low back in the right position. And this, when I'm standing, I try to just do a little better than I normally would. And then usually when I'm just sitting, I'm just being lazy. But you can do it when you're sitting too. If you're at the computer, you can try and just instead of leaning back against the chair in your car, just pull yourself over top of your hips. Think ear, shoulder, hip. And you're like, my feet are supporting me as like a tripod. And that way my hips are underneath me. If I'm here, that's when the breath comes here. If I'm there, I breathe into the back. It helps my neck too. So I'm not reaching there. My head doesn't have to do weird things, or you're kind of bringing yourself closer to the screen. And it's okay as long as if the angle changes, you're still ear, shoulder, hip, no matter how hard I hinge, like the founder. Stuff like that.
Yeah, when I eat, I'm just trying to sit up straighter. Not doing my slap.
Not bend over there.
Yeah, bend over, try and eat as fast as I can.
This is a lot. This is like an hour. So
Yeah.
I think Jesse said do movement snacks, little movement snacks throughout the day. Just like a minute of something. Just kind of reinforce, especially in the morning. Like now is great because now you're like, I feel better. I feel like I'm going to move better throughout the day versus like moving terrible all day long and then trying to make up for it by stretching a lot at the end of the day. It's like, I'm in pain. Instead of being in pain, why don't you just move better so you don't end up in pain? And then you hope that helped.
A lot.
That was a tough one.
Yeah.
Figured we'd have fun with you guys.
Yeah. But I kind